Okay, let's get started. What's up, Gamer Nation? I'm your boy No Scope Gamer Videos, and today we're going to be taking a look at a tier list. So if you're not familiar with the tier list, this is basically how they work. There's S tier, there's A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, F tier. So now that you know how tier lists work, we're going to be doing a tier list of the tier list. So we're going to be ranking how good the tiers are. And so let's actually get started. Let's go out of order. Let's actually get started with D tier. So I think D tier is really important to express something that's not always good, right? And actually very rarely good. But sometimes it has its sort of niche, right? It has its purpose. So it's not like F tier where something in F tier is never useful and it's completely bad. But D tier is it's not never useful, it's sometimes useful. And being able to express that something is sometimes useful is in itself sometimes useful, right? It's not always useful. Not a lot of things are niche, but when you need to express that something is niche, D tier is important. So I think D tier is D tier, right? It's a sometimes useful tier to express something. Let's bounce on over to A tier. A tier is basically saying, hey, this thing's good, I recommend it, but it's not gonna wow you very often, right? It's not like a no-brainer. And that's important, but it's just like your opinion on what you like. I think oftentimes things that are in A tier are things that are really just kind of average, but that the person that's ranking the thing likes more, right? For not really like a good reason, they just like are emotionally biased. So I think A tier is I think it's kind of bad. I think it's almost always useless. I think you can almost always put everything that's in A tier into B tier, and you'd have an equivalent kind of list. You'd have an equivalent tier list, right? Let's talk about C tier. I think C tier is C tier is bad. I think C tier is almost never useful. Now that I see FAQ, now that I see FAQ, I gotta move up A to D tier because A sometimes is useful. It's not as bad as C. C is never useful, right? Because you have so many tiers to express, hey, something's average, that's sort of B tier. D tier is something sometimes useful, F tier is bad. What is C tier? It's like, it's bad, but not, it just doesn't mean anything to put something in C tier. So I think C tier is really bad. So it's in F tier. B tier is in C tier because B tier is saying something's average, and that's not very exciting. And so I just don't think it's. I just think it's kind of a below average take when you put something in B tier. All right, so that leaves us with the extremes: S tier and F tier. F tier is. Let's see. So F tier lets you say that something's really bad, right? And that's important sometimes to say like something's really bad, right? Because it lets people know like avoid this like the plague, right? And that's important. So I'm going to put that into A tier because it's really an important thing to express. S tier is obviously going into S tier, right? Because it's the same thing as F tier. Lets people know the opposite. Don't avoid this like the plague. Get up in this like a medicine, right? So it's basically the same sort of power as F tier in that it's an unconstrained recommendation, but it's more positive. And we're all about positivity here on the channel. So that's my tier list of the tiers. As you can see, actually, hold on. B tier doesn't have anything in it, which makes me think that maybe B tier is C tier. Sorry, is F tier, because it was useless. So that makes a lot of sense. And then now all the things in F tier are empty, which makes sense. They were useless, right? So I'm going to keep C tier in F tier. And yeah, so I think that's it. Oh, we didn't do SS tier. So SS tier, this is a tier that you'll sometimes see. Let's give that like a fun pink color. This is a tier that you'll sometimes see on lists. It's like even better S than S. I think this is F tier. I mean, it's just like, we already have S tier. It's a duplicate. And then of course we also have, SSS tier. Sometimes affectionately called snake tier. SSS tier is basically like, this is even better than SS tier. That's also F tier, because that's, I mean, at this point, like we have all these other tiers here, you know? What's the point of just adding more S's, right? And then of course we have SSS S tier. And that tier is like, this is even better than SSS tier. And that tier is really good. So that's my tier list. It's the definitive ranking. Thanks for watching. Remember to rate, comment, and subscribe, and send me money on Patreon, and tweet at me. Also, make sure to send me mail. My address is in the comments below. Make sure to go out and vote. Man, I'm thirsty.